Hot take. Scott Cawthon did not write the Five Nights at Freddy's lore. He did not plan the series. He threw a few cliche horror tropes into the first game, and people ran with it and created their own lore. And not wanting to disappoint the people that had brought him overnight success, he took their ideas and ran with them, deciding to milk Fnaf for all he possibly could to make up for all his failed projects in the past. Video end. Right? Well, I'm sure it will be for many of the people who clicked on this after hearing the utter sacrilege I've committed against Lord Cawthon. But for the many of you who actually paid attention to the rise and fall and rise again of these games, and the ever-expanding and self-contradicting lore, it's glaringly obvious that Scott Cawthon didn't actually invent the lore of his own most popular game series. Remember when the story was supposed to end after the third game? Fnaf 3 was said to be the final game in the series, which Scott cleverly subverted by making every other game afterwards take place in the past. That's how you milk a series like a motherfucking master. But what led him to make this decision? Did he actually plan out 24 games? Did he really have all of that in mind when he created the first Fnaf game? No. You see, what I think is incredibly obvious as to have happened, is that a bunch of YouTubers jumped onto the Fnaf hype, and not wanting to be outdone by one another, they kept scouring the game's files and every pixel on screen and coming up with increasingly complex ideas as to what the lore of the series could possibly be. Now, don't get me wrong, Cawthon definitely left a couple of bits in there to act as lore for the game, but those seem to be more callbacks to famous horror tropes than actual story bits meant to be read into and expanded upon. Specifically, a well-known and soon-to-be retiring YouTuber by the name of MatPat is the true author of the franchise. I know he won't take credit for it, but I'm giving it to him anyways. You see, not only do I not believe that Scott Cawthon thought of 90% of what is commonly referred to in hindsight as the lore of the franchise, I actually believe that he was confused by most of what Matt and the growing Fnaf community came up with. But as time went on, and more theory videos were uploaded to the internet, a fan theory for the game's lore began to solidify, and Scott found himself with the story material for several more games, and now a movie trilogy. See, Scott never intended for Fnaf to have such a deep backstory. As many of you probably already know, Fnaf was Scott's last attempt at making it as a video game creator, and he just happened to luck out and the game blew up. The rest is history. Now, I don't want to come down on Scott too hard, but I do want to give credit where it's due, and I believe that a large amount of that credit, like I said, falls into MatPat's lap. I think he went a bit overboard with the speculation, and in turn, the games began to be shaped around his theories until they became fact. In essence, what I'm saying is, Matt indirectly pitched the story of Fnaf to Scott over the course of the game's development, and he's not given the author credits he deserves. I'm not exactly sure to what extent Matt is responsible for the story of the games, as that would require a deep dive through his and every other Fnaf theorizer's video catalogs, and an elaborate cross-check with release dates on the books and games, and who wants to sit through all that noise? But what I can say with certainty is, Five Nights at Freddy's would not be enjoying a fraction of the widespread success it has experienced without the efforts of the Game Theory channel. And arguably, there would not even be as many games as there currently are if Scott didn't have his ghostwriter to turn to. Now, all of that said, it's actually a good thing that Cawthon basically crowdsourced the lore of the series, because the finished product we ended up with has some of the most fascinating lore of any game out there. Fnaf's backstory essentially ended up being a social experiment, a creative writing project, similar to SCP, where anyone could take part in its creation. That is what makes Fnaf deserving of its success. And the game wouldn't have gotten nearly as popular as it did if Scott acted as the sole author of the lore, and didn't leave room for people to speculate. But what do I know, right? I make review videos, not video games. What do you think of Fnaf? Do you think Scott Cawthon is deserving of all of his success? Leave me a comment and let me know. Let's talk about it. Thank you for watching, and take it easy.